All right, so today we're going to talk about social media advertising and when to really get started with it. So if you have been on the fence about it or have been trying to decide whether or not it's worth investing some time, energy, and money into, we're going to talk a little bit about the questions that you want to ask yourself and some things to process through before you get started. So let's jump into that. The biggest thing with marketing in general, but especially with ads, because there is a level of money that you're putting behind it, right, is if you don't plan for it and you don't get really intentional with it, they're not going to do well, right? You're going to end up spending money that you maybe don't want to or don't have, that you could spend somewhere else, or you could just end up not getting the results that you want. So a big key piece of this is planning ahead. All right, so the 3 questions that we want to ask ourselves when deciding whether or not to start an ad campaign is, do you have valuable gated content that you can promote as a lead into your sales funnel? Do you have a budget? And do you have the right expectations for your ads? So a lot of times the reasons people determine whether or not ads are a success or failure is based on their expectations, right? So these are the 3 questions we're really going to dive into a little bit deeper today. And then of course, we'll have time at the end for any questions that you have, and I'm happy to cover anything else there. All right, so the value of gated content and a sales funnel. That's what we want to talk about first. So as a top of funnel tool, social media ads should generally offer some type of value and really excite people to get involved or to click on what you're sharing, right? So whether it's some type of report, or maybe you're offering a template that people really like or want, or maybe it's a discount, all of that is something that'll entice people to want to share their information with you and get connected with you. So for example, the value of like a free audit is the gated content that we have for WDS. So this is just a short screen share of the landing page that I have. And I did run some ads for this earlier this year, and it went pretty well. I ended up getting a lot of great traction on the website audits just organically. And so that's the only reason I didn't continue to run ads, but I learned a lot from running them. So this is the gated content, right? So the valuable piece of information I'm offering are those audits. So that's something to consider. Maybe you have some type of report that you offer. So if you do any kind of annual reporting, or you work with a lot of statistics or something like that, that could be something that could be of really high value to your ideal clients that you could share for free, or really it's in exchange for their email or some kind of connection with you. Maybe you have like a template. So I have some social media marketing templates that I sometimes will promote and use to generate some interest in my mailing list and just get people connected to me. And then if I were to do a discount, so I've done some of those in the past, but if you have a product of some kind that you want to offer a discount for, we see this a lot during the holidays as people will advertise, 10%, 50% off, 75% off, their products for holidays or for a specific campaign or something like that. So those are just a few ideas, but you can choose anything. The key though is to have it be gated. And that means having something where the person, when they click on your ad, they're taken to a landing page that then requires them to input their email address or to follow you or to do something. Ideally, it would be giving you an email address so that they can then get access to that free content. Because unless you just want to have people become aware of who you are and you just want them to see your Facebook page or whatever it is that you're giving, there's not as much value in that when it comes to actual conversion. So if you're looking for finding something that'll really help convert people into clients or to customers, having that gated content is going to really help you take that next step, and it'll weed out the people who you do or do not want to interact with, right? So if people are willing to give you their email address to get this content or to, request an audit, it's very likely that they would be interested in your services. If someone maybe clicks on the ad and then they don't convert by giving the email address, then it's possible that they either don't need or don't want your service or product, or maybe they're just not ready to make a purchase, and that's okay. But now they know about you, right? So that's another helpful tool to having that gated content. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is the sales funnel. So it's really important when doing a social media ad that you have a proper funnel built out. Otherwise, you'll end up wasting your time and money and opportunities. And I see this all the time working with clients is we'll talk about ads and they'll say they want this, that, and the other to target these people, but there's not a proper funnel afterwards. And so we end up talking more about, okay, how are you creating your marketing funnel to get people from clicking on that ad to actually signing a contract or making a purchase of some kind. And that can get tricky, right? And that takes a lot of time and effort and thought process. But if you plan ahead for that, and if you create a really great sales funnel, it'll work ideally kind of automatically for you. So what does this look like? I'll take those website audits as an example because those have been really successful for me. So someone might see that website audit offer on my social media and they'll click on it, they'll fill out the form and get in contact with me. So that's the first step, right? So social media, the next step is contacting me and getting that getting that audit together. So even though I'm going to create that audit for them, that's not actually, a conversion. I mean, it's conversion to some extent, but it's not a true conversion in the sense of converting them into a client. And so my next step is to create that audit for them and then follow up. So now we're in this email portion, relationship building portion of my sales funnel. And so from there, I make sure to, do a really great job on the audit. I'm personable. I give really good, solid advice. And I try to go a little bit, above and beyond as opposed to just, hey, tweak this here and there, but really give them some good, explanation as to, hey, why I would recommend structuring your site in this way, or why I would recommend reconsidering these colors or things like that. And even sometimes getting into, hey, you really could have an opportunity here for marketing or for, collecting more emails or something like that. So I try to go, above and beyond and then kind of follow up with them. So a lot of times what happens is I'll give them the audit and then they can do whatever they want with it, right? A lot of times I've had people who will implement it themselves and that's great. But I've also had probably half of the people I've done audits for have then hired me to perform and execute on those recommendations, right? And sometimes they're like, hey, I want a whole new site. So those have been really fruitful, but that whole process is part of my sales funnel. And so thinking through those pieces for yourself, what are you offering? How are you following up? Where does this put them within your, marketing process and sales funnel to get them to the place you want them to be? And ideally I didn't do this, which, is where I'm even like, oh, wow, okay, gotta take my own advice. Ideally, I need to get all of those people onto my email list, right? Most of them were on my email list, and some of them, that's how they found out about the audits, which was great. But for people that I connected with that I had never met before, had really no other connections other than maybe kind of a random person within my online network and community, I need to get them on my mailing list because that'll help me to communicate with them on a regular basis, allow them to see kind of the way I work and what I do and how I approach things, and even just keep me front of mind for them. So those are some of the things you want to think through when building out your sales funnel. So that's a big key piece that I didn't want to skip over. So definitely thinking through, how does this ad play into the greater funnel that you've created? And if you don't have that funnel, then that is really what you need to create first, and then you can really look at ads. So that's my little spiel on that. All right, the next thing that we want to talk about is budget. So how much money should you be spending on ads? That really varies for every person. And the reality is that depending upon what platforms you're using and just how you structure things, it could be, you could get really great results with a very little money, or you could get no results with a lot of money. I've seen both. So it's definitely a case by case kind of setup. So really what you want to do is consider how much a sale is worth to you and how likely you are to target the right people for your ad. And so what I mean by that is when you're setting up your ad campaigns and when you're considering how much to spend, you need to ask yourself, okay, what's my typical conversion rate? So let's say I was promoting these webinars, right? If my typical conversion rate for someone who attends a webinar is going to be 50%, right? So if half of the people who attend these webinars hire me, then I'm pretty confident that spending a solid chunk of change on promoting these webinars, getting people to sign up, all of that will pay for itself very quickly. And so I'll be willing to maybe put some more money behind it. Whereas if my conversion rate is something like 2%, I might be a little more hesitant, right? Because that's even telling me that maybe there's something within my sales process that's affecting my conversion rate. So, I might say, okay, well, let me start out with $250, right? I can pay $250 to learn something new, to test this out, to get some more data, because I'm not sure that I'm going to get any new clients. Whereas if I'm closing half of the people I talk to, then I could spend $500 to $1,000 and quickly make back that money. And so those are just some things to think through is, what is it really going to take for you to, reap some investment rewards on that, and what is realistic for your budget. So a lot of platforms, especially Facebook, I found $250 is good. It's kind of the lowest I would recommend someone to start with. $500 is a really solid place to begin as well. And then obviously the more money you spend, the more likely you are to be able to collect more data, right? So I'm not going to guarantee that it's going to result in sales or new clients, but these platforms are very much so pay to play in some ways. So if you can spend more money to really get your message and your brand and your content out there, it's likely that you are going to start to see some serious traction. And some of that's just a numbers game, right? So if you show someone something a certain number of times, they're more likely to remember it and to engage with that content if they see it 10 times versus if they see it twice. So just thinking through those pieces as well is, okay, how frequently can I share this with someone and how much is it worth to me? So for example, I'm not currently running any ads for my business because I have more than enough clients on my plate, right? And a lot of my sales process and my clients come from referrals. And so for my business personally, it is not necessarily, or it's not necessary for me to invest in advertising in this way. It's better for me to invest in my team or in other avenues. Whereas if you are just starting up and you really need to get your name out there, or maybe your network is not as strong, or you don't have that same kind of referral and word of mouth marketing in place, then you might be willing to, really invest in some paid advertising. So just some things to think through. The other thing to know is you don't have to spend all your money at once. So you can take and put in, you could do, let's say you have a $500 a month budget for some Facebook ads. You could do the first 2 weeks of that month at $250 and see what works. Do some A/B testing. See, okay, are people responding more to this type of copy or this? Are they really liking these videos versus these standard photos? Am I targeting the right people? All of these different things, you can really test it out. And I highly, highly recommend that. And then you can take the rest of that money and the rest of that month and create a truly optimized campaign where you're saying, okay, I know that this is the ad that gets the most attention. So I'm going to have, instead of running 3 ads, I'm going to run this one really great ad and I'm going to put all of my money behind it as opposed to splitting it up. And I'm only going to target this specific group that I know is interested in these things based on the data I've collected. Now, obviously, the longer you run it, the more data points you can collect. And so the more information you can have. But if you're, trying to work within a certain budget in a certain amount of time, I like to say a month is a decent amount of time for you to really get enough data points to give you some good information on what to do. So, I wish I could say if you spent this amount of money, you'll make this amount back. That is far from the case. And so a lot of it is really just kind of figuring out what works for you in your business, and figuring out which platform works for you, so maybe running LinkedIn ads is going to be better for you than Facebook ads, or maybe you need to be running Pinterest ads or Twitter ads, or getting on TikTok and running ads there. There's so many different platforms that you can use, and a lot of it's going to be just a lot of trial and error. And so think about, how much can you wisely spend on these ads, and how can you experiment with them, and just consider all the different pieces and how you can optimize that. All right, so this last one that I want to talk about is great expectations. So what are you expecting to get out of your first campaign? Especially if you haven't run any before, what can you expect? So people purchase when they're ready to purchase, right? And you have to find that like sweet spot, essentially, of like they're looking for your product or service, and they're also ready to purchase your product or service. And so you have to have a lot of touch points. And so that's one way to think through your ads as well is, you may not get all of the results that you're looking for. You may not be able to say, oh, I ran this ad and I immediately got, this new client or this new purchase. You may, which would be awesome, but there's a good chance that what will happen is people will see your ads, they'll follow you, they'll see your organic content, maybe they'll sign up for your newsletter. All these different pieces of your marketing, of your brand, of your digital presence will be part of their experience online. And so each time they get to interact with your content, they'll get to learn something new about you, be reminded about you. And then when they're ready to make that purchase, they'll reach out to you, and maybe they'll respond to, a request, or maybe they will say, hey, I'm just ready to go. Let's get started. So that's definitely something to keep in mind is, okay, are people clicking on your ad? Are they converting in that sense? Or are your ads completely just missing the mark? So thinking about just where you're meeting people, and what kind of experience they're having. They may not be ready to purchase what you have to offer right now, but that doesn't mean they won't be in 6 months or 6 weeks or 6 days, right? So those are just some things to help you consider, whether or not this is a success or failure. So just a couple, helpful tips is plan out what you expect to see from your ad campaigns, and compare it to the rest of your marketing efforts. So plan out how they fit, into that larger sales funnel. And you can even write them down. Sometimes it's really helpful to just write down, say, okay, I expect to see, this many people click on this ad, or I will consider this a success if I get one person to reach out, or, something like that, whatever it is. And it can be small. It can just be, I'll consider this a success if I put these ads together and they run properly and they don't break, right? So whatever it is, sometimes that can be helpful to just write it down and remind yourself that, especially if you're doing it on your own, for the very first time and you're not super confident about it or familiar with it, it's a win to just be running these ads and to learn something new of it. The other thing too is, it can just be super helpful to think about how many people are visiting your website and set some goals there. So if you can convert half of the people who end up visiting your site, so let's say 30 people or 30% of the people who see the ad click through and go to your site, and then 50% of that 30% are actually filling out the content. And then maybe from that 50% of that 30%, maybe 10% are really actually going to be good leads for you. And that could end up being 2 people, but that's 2 more people than you had before, right? So giving yourself some of that time to just process through and say, okay, what am I going to consider a success? How has my other content performed? What does my typical sales process look like? And how do I convert people typically? Can all be helpful things to consider when setting your expectations. And something I've done, like for a few ad campaigns that I ran when I first started experimenting with this, especially with my company, I just said, you know what, I'm going to spend $200 on this, and I'm going to call it a success if if it's under $3 in cost per click or something, right? Which is terrible. The average is like $1 or less cost per click. But I was just experimenting and wanted to try something new. And I think it got to like $2. So I was able to meet that mark. It wasn't what would be ideal by any means, but I was able to just say, okay, if I'm going to start here and I want to learn something new, and I did learn something from that data that I collected of like what worked and what didn't, and even what type of content I would want to promote. And so just set yourself some really good expectations that you're comfortable with, that you're confident with, and don't worry if you're not seeing crazy mega sales just because you've put out an ad. There's a lot of information that you can learn from the results of that advertisement that'll help you to improve, so the next time you run it, you'll get even better results. So just some of those thoughts there on expectations. All right, so now Q&A time. I know we've got a couple here, so let me pull those up. All right, the first one is from Alicia. Do you suggest coupling a contest/giveaway with an ad, or is it overkill? I think that's perfect. So I recently did some giveaways for a client back in, well, this past winter/fall and also last summer. Gosh, that feels so long ago now. And it was really, really great. It was really successful. And it's honestly a really great initial ad to experiment with, because a lot of times people, they want free stuff. So if you are sending the right message for the right people who are looking for the things that you are giving away, it can do a lot of great, it can be a really great incentive for them. And so you're going to reach out. Those ads will help you reach people outside your specific network, and ideally get not only more people to like and follow you on whatever platform you're sharing those ads on, but also to, collect their information as they enter the giveaway. So I would definitely do some ads with a contest or giveaway. Great question. All right. Any other questions? Oh, thank you. My lipstick is from Beauty Counter. It's probably the first time I've worn it in like a year, but the lighting was not as great. So I thought, help myself out here. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? We've got a few more minutes here. I know I kind of sped through some of it. Ooh, another great question. All right, Alicia asks, what's your number one tip for lowering cost per click? I would say ideally it's going to be targeting the right people. So if you can get in front of the right people who are going to want to click on your content, that's going to lower the cost of what it takes to do that, if that makes sense. So like, if Facebook has to show your ad to 1,000 people to get one click, that's not as great as if they can show it to 200 people and get one click, right? So that ratio is going to be better. The more people that will click on your link or click on your ad than what you're sharing to, the better it'll be. And a lot of that comes down to targeting. And also just even like the copy and the design of the ad, which I guess, it's kind of two tips. But yeah, if you can target people really, really well, and then utilize your ad copy and visuals to speak to them really and like connect with them, that's going to result in the right people clicking on your content. And a lot of times that comes with testing, all that kind of stuff. So great questions. Love it. Ooh, okay. Kim has a great question. Okay. On Facebook, are there different tiers of cost for your goal, i.e. awareness versus sale versus install? Yes, there are. So it depends upon a lot of different pieces, but yeah, so it'll definitely impact the cost per click. If you're doing awareness versus sale versus install, because the conversion is different. So if you're just trying to let people know that you exist, so that awareness piece, Facebook's just going to show your ad to everybody who falls under your target market, right? And so that conversion, they're going to categorize as like a click, right? So if someone clicks on that ad, that's going to be considered a conversion for that ad. And so that cost is likely going to be lower cost per click. the sale, so if you're trying to make a sale or if you're trying to get someone to install an app, it probably will take a little bit or a lot more to get that person to click and install or make that sale. And so Facebook's going to have to show that ad to more people to get that same level of conversion. And so it's not necessarily that your budget has to change. Like, let's say you're working with a $500 budget, your cost per click for an awareness campaign might be 32 cents, whereas for a sale or an install campaign, maybe closer to $1 or more, just depending upon kind of how optimized your ad is. So that's a great question. Love it. Okay, another great question. If your ultimate goal is to obtain app installs, should you first start with ads for awareness? Ooh, that's a really good question, Kim. I would say, so if your ultimate goal is to obtain app installs, if no one knows who you are, then definitely, yes, start with awareness. Because the other thing that you can do is retarget those people who interact with your ad or interact with your website or sign up for something, or what's the word I'm looking for? There's another one, but I can't think of it. It escaped me. But basically, if someone interacts with your content, there's a way for you to take that data and then retarget them with a new ad. So for example, in the case that you're describing, if we're trying to get people to install an app, what I would do is first do a few awareness ads and get as many people as you possibly can to interact with your content, to visit your website, to ideally, if you can get their email, so maybe there's something that you can offer them that they'll sign up and get your email or give their email to you. You can then actually take that list of emails and go back to Facebook and say, hey, everybody who, has this email, and that's only if it's attached to their Facebook platform, which can get tricky because sometimes people put personal versus work, all that fun stuff. But, if they put their email in, then you can say, hey, retarget them with this new ad if they match this email. And then ideally when they've put their email in, that is on a landing page that you've created and that you're tracking. And so then you can even take that data and say, anyone who visited this website page, we want to retarget them again. And now this ad that you're going to do the second time or maybe third time around is going to be promoting the app itself and saying, hey, install our new app or yada, yada, yada. So I would definitely consider that process there. Now, if you already have a solid audience and user base, then maybe just people who have said that they're interested in the app but haven't necessarily downloaded it, you definitely will want to retarget them in that same way. So I'd say when it comes to app installations, to get the most out of your ads, I would focus on retargeting people based on the information and the data that you can collect about them, just because depending upon what the app is and how you market it and what kind of ad you create, it's not necessarily likely that they're going to download it immediately, right? So I think about the Robinhood app. For years now, I've been getting, ads from them and for different things, and I just have never downloaded them, right? And I still won't, especially now with all the press they've recently had. But that's just kind of something to think about, right? So, and part of it is I'm not their ideal person I'm not their ideal customer. But if you haven't, completely collected that information for your ideal customers, it can be helpful to do kind of 2 or 3 campaigns. So that's a great question, Kim. Awesome. All right. Well, it is officially 5 o'clock. So if you need to jump out, feel free. But I will update us with a few last things here. So for April's schedule, I've updated my website with this as well. So next Thursday, we're actually going to be doing a Q&A with me. So come with any questions that you have. And if you aren't able to make it, feel free to submit your questions ahead of time. You can just reply directly to the follow-up email that I have sending out this evening, and we can talk about anything to do with digital marketing. So if you have questions about websites or Facebook ads or Google ads or general social media, email marketing, whatever it is, submit your questions and I will answer as much as I can in 30 minutes. And then the rest of April, we'll be talking about SEO. So we'll talk about some basic SEO things, next Thursday. Then we'll talk about the consistency of creating content and how that's important to SEO. Then we'll look at how to determine whether or not you're really getting a return on your investment for your SEO, and then also how to approach SEO for your business. So whether you need to hire someone or if there's some things that you can do on your own to really boost your Google search results. So definitely, if that is something of interest to you, please join us next week and all the following weeks. And I will make sure to send a recording of this week and all of those weeks out as we do in the evenings on Thursday. So yes, if you have any questions about that, please let me know. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk about all these SEO topics next month. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Thursday and a great weekend. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.